Good evening. The day after the Gen Z revolution saw chaos and confusion on the streets of Kathmandu and curfew across Nepal. Situation, it's peaceful. The army is out on the streets, but there were street fights right outside the Nepal army headquarters, and we'll show you these images of the street fights that are happening here. There was chaos and clashes on who would lead the negotiations with the army. Online opinion polls suggested the name of former Chief Justice of Nepal, Sushila Karki, but a faction of protesters didn't agree, and they proposed the name of Kulman Ghising, very popular amongst the youth. Now, Kulman Ghising is seen as the can-do man who sorted out the 18-hour-long load-shedding problems of Nepal. But will that power vacuum lead to more chaos and crisis? And that's our top focus on India First.
Gen Z split Nepal on the edge. From protests to a power vacuum. Gen Z clashes at the army HQ gates, while talks go on the interim government inside. Karki or Kulman question divides Gen Z. What next for Nepal? Chaos or consensus? That is the big focus on India First.
So Nepal remains on the edge with apprehensions that the political vacuum could lead to a greater crisis in the Himalayan paradise. Symbols of the state have already been destroyed. The ousted Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli's party has called for an investigation not only into his ouster but also on the violence that followed, and the question remains, if the interim leadership that will come up in Nepal, will they have the legitimacy to bring Nepal back from the brink, and whether the vacuum would impact India too. Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, former Adjutant General of the Indian Army, was Colonel of the 11 Gorkha Rifles. He commanded troops both from Nepal and India in the Gorkha Rifles. He joins me on the Chakraview podcast at 8:30 tonight on the role of the Nepal Army in bringing peace and the road ahead. I'm Gaurav Sawant. As always, let's get started with the headlines on India First. Chorus grows for former Nepal Chief Justice Sushila Karki to become the interim head of the government. Gen Z group says ready to accept Sushila's leadership. Former Chief of Nepal Par Kulman Ghising also in the race. Rahul Gandhi reiterates the hydrogen bomb warning once again, says elections stolen in Maharashtra, Haryana and Karnataka, assures to give another explosive evidence on the vote chori charge in coming days.
हम और डायनामिक एक्सप्लोसिव आपको सबूत देने वाले हैं। बीजेपी के लोग एजिटेट हो रहे हैं, मैं उनसे कहना चाहता हूं आप एजिटेट नहीं होइए, क्योंकि हाइड्रोजन बम जब आएगा सारा का सारा साफ हो जाएगा।
Big win for security forces against red terror in Chhattisgarh. 10 Maoists killed in Gariabad district. Top Maoist leader Manoj Balkrishna killed. He had a bounty of 1 crore rupees on his head. Headway in India-US trade talks. US team to visit India by September end. India looks to seal the trade deal by end of November.
फरवरी 2025 में माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी और राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप जी ने मिलकर हमें निर्देश दिया था कि दोनों पक्ष के मंत्री फॉल 2025 यानी नवंबर 2025 तक एक अच्छा करार
In the US, Charlie Kirk's shooter remains at large. Officials say killer appears to be of college-going age who blended in the crowd and jumped off the roof after the shooting. Gen Z protesters clashed outside the Nepal Army headquarters this afternoon on the issue of negotiations with the army and the road ahead for Nepal. One group recommended that Sushila Karki, former Chief Justice of Nepal, represent them in these negotiations and be their face. This was a decision taken apparently on the basis of a poll that was conducted on a social media platform. However, another group of protesters remained opposed to it and wanted Kulman Singh, former chief of Nepal Electricity Authority, Kulman Singh, he's seen as the can-do man of Nepal, the man who freed Nepal from an endless cycle of 18-hour-long daily power cuts. And then there is the question of Balin Shah, who's suddenly taken a backseat. India today has the biggest team of reporters on ground zero, getting you a 360-degree perspective on all the latest news and analysis. But first, they get us this report.
Clashes at the gates of the Nepal Army headquarters. Gen Z supporters turning on each other. The same youth who brought down a government now brawl among themselves in the middle of the road. Inside the army compound, talks are on. Under heavy protection, former Chief Justice Sushila Karki and activist Durga Prasad were escorted inside. Other youth leaders stopped at the gate. This after Gen Z delegates in the army sat across the table for 2 hours on Wednesday. While speaking to the media, Gen Z delegation leader Gurung broke down. Gen Z is trying to choose its face online. Justice Sushila Karki leads the polls. Another faction backs Kulman Singh, an engineer who is credited with solving Nepal's power crisis.
Right now, the first thing is the interim government. The second thing is dissolving the current parliament. And the third thing is maintaining law and order in the country. These are the things, three things that we are looking forward for now.
Nepal's president has appealed for calm, writing that he is working within the constitution to protect democracy and ensure peace. An uneasy calm remains on the ground. Government offices lie in ruins and curfew remains in place.
बाकायदा जो मुख्यमंत्री तथा मंत्रियों के परिषद का ये कार्यालय है, अगर आप देखें तो ये जो कार्यालय है ये आपको इस वक्त दिखाई देगा. ये तमाम जो सरकारी ऑफिस हैं इन्हें फूंका गया है. पूरे शहर में इस तरीके से कोई भी दफ्तर नहीं बचा है जो कि नहीं जिसे जलाया गया हो.
In Ramachhap, the army opened fire after a jailbreak. 2 prisoners dead, 10 more shot in the clash. Security is tight at the India-Nepal border, with only oil tankers being allowed to cross into India.
स्थिति काबू में होने के संकेत मिल रहे हैं. इस वजह से कुछ हद तक इन ट्रक्स को अलाउ किया जा रहा है. आप देख सकते हैं कि जो सारे ट्रक्स है ये नेपाल के नंबर प्लेट्स है और ये नेपाल के जो ट्रक है 3 दिनों से इसी जगह पर खड़ी थी. और आखिरकार सूत्रों के मुताबिक ये खबर मिली है कि दूसरे छोर पर नेपाल सेना पहुंची है और नेपाल पुलिस भी मौजूद है. इस वजह से यहाँ पर कुछ हद तक स्थिति काबू है, इसलिए ट्रकों को छोड़ा जा रहा है.
From arson to aftershocks, Nepal is scarred but still searching for peace. The big question remains, will Gen Z be able to reach a consensus on who they want to lead the nation? And will that finally ensure normalcy in Nepal? With Tapas Sen Gupta and Amit Bhardwaj in Nepal, Bureau Report, India Today.
Let me quickly cut across and bring into this conversation Ambassador Rakesh Sood, India's former ambassador to Nepal. Ambassador Sood, how would you assess the situation in Nepal today? Is this power vacuum worrisome?
I think it is extremely worrisome because right now, the methodology that we are looking at in terms of an interim government and so on, dissolution of parliament, interim government, this is outside the constitution of Nepal. The constitution of Nepal calls for fresh election. If no government can be formed with the existing parliament, and if members of parliament are resigning, so then there have to be fresh elections within 6 months, and there is the provision of a caretaker government. The
Yes.
caretaker government, well, if Prime Minister Oli is now incommunicado, as we see, and but there is actually no provision for an interim government of the kind that we are looking at. Also, there are talks of a large number of constitutional amendments. So therefore, we are not very clear as to what is going to happen. And then
In fact,
uh,
go on, sir.
finally, it is a good thing that the president has today spoken. I mean,
Yes.
I would have thought that the president, particularly after the resignation by Prime Minister Oli, should have addressed the nation. But instead of that, it was the army chief who was addressing the nation, which is very peculiar.
And
And I
all these
found that a
developments,
little
clearly,
strange.
you are absolutely right. And look at the manner in which symbols of authority, symbols of state have been destroyed, burnt to the ground in Nepal. The army, as of now, is the maintaining, authority, the authority that's maintaining law and order. But what is your reading of names of Sushila Karki or Kulman Ghee Singh and Balen Shah that are doing the rounds as per Nepal's existing constitution? Can they be made head of an interim establishment, and
Well,
how will they govern?
these are all names that are doing the rounds. But Valencia, for example, came as an outsider in 2022 when he stood for election as an independent. He doesn't have a political party and so on. The other new political party that came out of nowhere in 2022 was RSP, which was
Yes.
led by Ravi Lamichhane, who was a television personality. But then Ravi Lamichhane rose to the top. He became deputy prime minister and home minister, but then got involved in a cooperative scandal worth thousands of crores. And he was in jail actually when during this whole chaos and things like that. There are about various jails have been opened up, and more than 13,000 prisoners have just gone out, including Ravi Lamichhane.
Yes.
So we don't know what these people want. Or now there are three old established parties like the Nepali Congress, the UML, and the Maoists.
Yes.
They even today constitute about 75-80% of the strength of the parliament.
And all of them
And
have been targeted.
what they've been doing is that they have been playing this game of musical chairs between their leaderships and so on for a long time. So, which is why this resentment has been building up.
And in your view,
And
what then happens to leaders like KP Sharma Oli or Sher Bahadur
no,
Deuba or Pushpakamal Dahal, Prachand?
I don't think that any of them have a future in politics in Nepal. Neither Prachanda, nor Oli, nor Deuba. Those names are out. And in fact, many of those other names like Koirala and so on, the familiar names that we know in Nepali politics, which have been there for a long time. I think those names are over. In fact, it's interesting. We don't look at it, but by the end of this year, there were supposed to be annual general conventions for all three major political parties. Prachanda was being challenged by two young leaders from his own party because Prachanda has been heading that party as general secretary since 1989.
Yes.
And they wanted to put term limits. And there was a proposal that was put up, and it is but there are murmurs of discontent. Oli
And the
was
current
being
vacuum, sir?
challenged.
Yes.
Oli was being challenged by none other than the former president Vidya Devi Bhandari, who
Yes.
was a member of his own party and who retired 2 years ago as president. But obviously the party discontented elements appealed to her and she was ready to re-enter politics. Oli was trying to prevent her from re-entering politics. In Nepali Congress, Dioba was trying to postpone the general convention. In Nepali Congress, there's a limit, and Dioba had crossed that limit of how long he could continue to chair the party. But he was trying very hard to postpone his general convention to beyond 2027 because he wanted to be able to distribute the tickets for the next general election. So, in each of these parties, there were rumblings of discontent, just as there were rumblings of discontent in the youth, just as
And
there
we
were
saw that,
rumblings of discontent in rural areas. But
and we saw the
now
manner in
it
which all
has,
of that came out. But Ambassador,
correct.
is this worrisome for India? Is this vacuum, is there's an apprehension that hostile neighbors could exploit this situation, and especially our hostile neighbor to the west, if not the north?
I don't think that as long as we are so far, I think the best thing that has happened is that nobody seems to have whenever there is a disturbance in Nepal, someone on the other comes up with a foreign hand and that finger always points at India. Now,
Yes.
I think that this time we've been fortunate, nobody has done that, at least so far. And partly it is because we have refrained from getting involved in any kind of uh, local political involvement. So, which is a good thing. And I think we should let the Nepalese sort it out. Meanwhile, we should always, we always have to monitor the developments very closely to see who is the beneficiary. Now, there are all kinds of conspiracy theories, by the way, going on in Nepal as to
Yes.
whether some foreign powers are behind it and things like that. So far, I don't see any evidence of any foreign powers behind it. I think this is a homegrown thing. But when you have a leaderless, organic kind of a movement like this, there are people who would like to fish in troubled waters. And
Oh,
that is what
absolutely.
we have to look out for.
And Nepal has seen many of these Jan Andolans in the past decades, right from 1990s through 2006 and now. But Ambassador, some of these protesters have access to assault rifles and grenades. There are reports of armories being looted. You mentioned 13,000 prisoners out on the loose now. Does this make a very lethal and dangerous cocktail, not just for Nepal, but even for India?
Well, to that extent, I think the government has already sealed the border. And partly we are also conscious because there are 7 bordering districts in Bihar, ranging from western Champaran all the way to Kishanganj and so on. So, and these, there is a frequent exchange of people, trade, communication, and a close relationship between the people on both sides of the border, whether it is the Bhojpuri connection, the Maithili connection, and so on. So that we've seen, and to that extent, and in fact, today I saw reports indicating that the SSB, the Sashastra Seema Bal, which is the border, which mans the border between India and Nepal, they actually got a couple of 24 prisoners who were trying to escape, who had
Yes.
escaped out of Kathmandu jails or Nepali jails, and they were trying to get into India. But they were apprehended and they were then handed back. So obviously, if it was, we don't want to run the risk of having a porous border at this time when there's so much uncertainty in Nepal.
Ambassador, I want to now throw this open for a wider discussion. Joining me now from Nepal is Darshan Prajuli, is a journalist covering this closely. Constantino Javier, a senior fellow at the Foreign Policy and Security Studies at Center for Social and Economic Progress. His research has covered foreign policy issues and crisis in Nepal, in Sri Lanka and in Myanmar. Dr. Sarthak Nepal is a citizen journalist and an orthopedic surgeon, joins us from Kathmandu. And Pravesh Subedi is a journalist. And Darshan Prajuli, may come and ask you first the current situation. Any clarity on who leads Nepal and how? And what happens to the old parliament? Does it now completely stand dissolved?
Yeah, I mean, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Go on, sir.
Right. So the situation on the ground here right now in Nepal is insane. There is a lot of international player that has been, playing a inside game. These political parties, and the name is already out. Susila Karki, who is backed by Balendra Saha, has been already backed. But also there are so many other things that's happening at the same time. Also, these protesters are questioning the, role of army chief here, because there is vacuum at the moment. So there are many players with some interest. It looked like the Durga Persai and other different statements that these three political parties are issuing at the moment is very worrying for this Gen Z revolution. As far as I understand, I've talked with a few of the leaders of these Gen Z revolutions like Hami Nepali, and such. And as you can see, these people, there is always this issue of divide and rule. So I also request Indian media to spread factual information, because of just one small misinformation, it can change the whole narrative of how this whole Gen Z revolution was started.
No, that's exactly why we have journalists on ground covering this, on our broadcast, so that there are only facts, and especially on India Today, it's always facts first. But Constantino Javier, will this interim leadership that comes up, will it have the kind of legitimacy that is required to bring about the reforms that the protesters or the Gen Z revolutionaries wanted? War on corruption, alternative governance. How will they have the systems in place?
Yeah,
Yeah, great
ultimately
point.
the whole
Okay, give me a moment. Let me get Constantino Javier to
Great
respond to it,
point,
please.
Gaurav.
Go on, sir.
Yeah, great point, Gaurav. I think that's the $1 million question. Point at this idea of the foreign hand. I think that's lazy thinking. I agree with Ambassador Sood. Let's understand the Nepali hand. This is a generation which is angry, worried about the economic future, tired of the old leadership, and it's just another chapter of what we've been seeing play out in the entire region, Sri Lanka and Maldives and Bangladesh. So a change. Second, the Gen Z, to your point, Gaurav, played a role in the end, I think, of the old system, as we saw the last few days. But you can't govern a country on Zoom, right, which they have been doing. I mean, Gen Z is the solution to the end of the old system, but obviously is not ready to step in and govern this country. So it creates a vacuum. So therefore, point three, Gaurav, to your point, I mean, we're hearing calls to abolish the constitution. The constitution of Nepal took 9 years to design. It took a long time, and it was very difficult. So I think that's certainly not that's not the problem, because the problem was the people that were managing the constitution. 17 prime ministers in 20 years, mostly a rotation of 3, 4 old upper caste old men. So the other solution, the only one I see out here, Gaurav, is keeping the parliament not until 2027, but holding elections as soon as possible, because two things will happen. If you hold elections within the old traditional parties, there will finally the emergence of a new generation of people. Leaders like, for example, just to give you an example, in the Nepal Congress, Gagan Thapa, who's 49 years old, has still not emerged as the leader of his party. He could have, and maybe it's too late now, but that is the first thing that will happen within the three old parties. The second thing that will happen as soon as you hold elections is that the new parties that are already rising will create more force. Other new parties, including the Gen Z parties, which have the possibility to create their own parties and voice their own concerns, will also be created. And I think then you open up the path for a real, more democratic and stable Nepal as soon as those elections are held.
Let me bring in Dr. Sarthak Nepal to weigh in on this. The next generation of the existing parties, or names that crop up through this opinion poll that's taken online on platforms like Discord. How will Nepal move forward, sir? What's the template that's likely to be followed?
I think first the interim government should come in place, and I feel it is very much important to have a leader at the moment who could conduct the proper election, not like Bangladesh where Muhammad Yunus was there, and the elections could not be there for a long time. But it is very, very important for Nepal to have a proper leader who could lead us to have a general election within a very quick time. So I feel any of the names that have been coming up, Susila Karki or Kulman Gising, I think both of them have done extremely great job at their time. But the names that have mostly represented, and have been given by the Gen Z is Honorable ex Chief Justice Susila Karki, and
Yes.
she is in talks with the President Ramchandra Paudel and the Chief of Army as well. So I think she could be one of the potential leader for us for quite some time, and then elections, and then we can see the rise of the older or the newer parties, probably new parties, because the people are not really happy with the older parties like Nepali Congress and
Yes.
CPN UML, CPN Maoist and all.
So Pravesh
Probably
Trivedi,
Rashtriya Swatantra Party, yeah,
okay,
could
and
rise up as
Pravesh
well. So
Trivedi, do you also see this as the end of the road for leaders like KP Sharma Oli, Prachanda, Sher Bahadur Deoba, Girja Prasad Koirala, that entire old leadership, end of the road for them? And what about leaders like Kulman Ghising? If I may, people could talk of him as this Nepal Electricity Authority can-do man. He got rid of corruption. He led the crusade against corruption. No more 18-hour power cuts. Is he the man of the moment along with Sushila Karki?
Things are evolving so rapidly. What we assume yesterday is not same today. There are a lot of things happening today, day and night. So it's not clear picture. We have no clear picture yet. But what can I assume right now is the Gen Z team are very committed to the democratic process. They respect the current constitution, and they even showing some sort of fear with the army leadership and negotiation. They are not feeling comfortable with dealing with the army leadership. What I observed there hours long discussion on internet. It's not clear what sort of leadership they are expecting. We are clear that they want not corrupted fresh leader, but they are not confident themselves they can give a good and strong leadership from their own network or their preferred network like Balen or something we said earlier. So ultimately what I say is, if the smart move taken from the old political parties, mainly from the young generation leaders, there
Okay.
is still some space for them.
Interesting. So younger leadership from the existing parties join hands with the new one. But,
Yeah,
Darshan Prachali,
there.
why did Balen Shah suddenly take a backseat? Because everyone said he'd done a lot between 2022 and 2025. He's immensely popular. Why is he taking a backseat? Or is the political posturing for now?
No, I think in my understanding why Balensa, took a black classes. So the whoever forms a government today for the election is just a kam chalao sarkar, right? Just for the 6 months. So when everything changes, because every Gen Z wants Balen to be 5 year, president if he you choose that path. And right now the breaking that I can give you is, Nepal army haven't shown. The president, where is president? That's the question of Gen Z, and everyone is demanding to, because the president has only been publishing a statement. We haven't seen him live. So one of the the demand that Gen Z are making right now is, where is the the president?
Constantino Javier, that's quite a valid point. One would have expected the president to address the nation, but it was the army chief, as Ambassador Sood also pointed out. And nobody in Nepal has seen the president. Nobody knows where ousted Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli is hiding. They just saw a helicopter leaving, and what happened after that? Where did that helicopter land? All of that information is not there. But at the same time, the challenges remain immense. The burning down of government buildings and courts, spontaneous anger against authority. But in the absence of the same authority, restoration of normalcy would be extremely difficult, not just in Kathmandu, but across Nepal.
Yes. 2 points, Gaurav. First one is, with all due respect to the president of Nepal, he's missing in action because he's an actor from a movie that has ended. That chapter has ended. There's no confidence on the streets in a set of personas and people that have ran the country. There are unacceptable people for whatever solution comes, number one. Number two, the people that are going to step in, as our Nepali friends were just saying, I think there will be people of transition. Not like in the Bangladesh case with the assumption and the ambition, which was in some ways an illusion that they would reform and restructure the entire country without elections, and finally have come to the terms that they have to have elections first. But here I think we have a cast of people that inspire confidence, have given good signs towards India of the last 2 days, that they want to work towards early elections that will bring to the scene a new generation of people that will run the country. Third, on the law and order, there's only one institution currently that is capable of providing law and order. It has been doing so since yesterday evening. It is the Nepal Army. In fact, led by an army chief who also studied in India and has good links here. So I think in that sense, what we need now is any of these figures to come to force and allow this to move on as soon as possible towards elections. And that will be, I think, something that will be welcome across the world. Just one point also about what other countries are doing or not doing. One of your previous questions. I think China has limited appetite to support Nepal in economic terms. We saw this in Sri Lanka, where Sri Lanka had a financial default. The Chinese were missing in action. And Nepal, I think, today notices and understands that. The West, as we know, has no appetite for great donations and support these days, especially the United States of America. So I think that just poses a huge challenge and onus on India also to be supportive of this next generation of Nepali leaders, listen to them, learn from what they want, and then provide, if request-based, what they need to provide a stable economy. Because this crisis, Gaurav, is an economic crisis. Let's not forget this. It is about a generation that has lost hope and is worried about the economic elevator that is less frequent and less capable. It is worried about the previous generation having gained from economic openness, and they are worried about their jobs, their prospects, which manifests politically, as we saw this week, in a very violent way.
Indeed, and you're absolutely right. India has a very major responsibility, of course, depending on the help that is sought by the new leadership in Nepal, as and when that leadership comes. But Dr. Sarthak, Nepal, what happens to the constitution of Nepal? Because there are voices within Gen Z who are not happy with the existing constitution. So what happens? How is that aspect likely to be taken forward?
I think it is very important to understand that the constitution, we draft everything according to the existing constitution as said by the President Ramchandra Paudel. There has been a lot of chaos regarding what are we going to do with the constitution, but even the Gen Z community have addressed the issue that they want the current constitution, and they want it in a way that it could be amended, and they want it in a good way. So I think the constitution that has been existing in the present will be continued, but there has been a lot of issues with the parliamentary dissolution, as some of the parties, some of the questions that have been arising is regarding the dissolution of the parliament within the different parties as well. So it is a big question, even for the newer and the older parties that are emerging here.
That's a very important point that you make, and there is a lot of uncertainty even now. It's sincerely hope that peace returns and, of course, prosperity to this Himalayan paradise as quickly as possible. To all my guests, many thanks, many thanks for joining me. As Constantino Javier was also pointing out, India has a very major responsibility to provide help when sought. Because do keep in mind, India and Nepal share a very strong civilizational bond. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi had gone to Nepal in 2014 for the SAARC summit, there were several things he said. He spoke of that civilizational bond. It's that link, Maryada Purushottam Sri Ram from Ayodhya, Ma Sita from Janakpur, and he went from the land of Somnath to the land of Pashupatinath. There's also a very important link that the Prime Minister mentioned. India, every war that India won since our independence, Nepal shed blood in those wars. That's how close that bond is. Civilizational ties, Sanatan Dharma, Buddhism, the army that binds our nations together. And a short while back, I spoke to Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, former Adjutant General of the Indian Army, former Colonel of the 11 Gorkha Rifles. He commanded troops in GR, both from India and Nepal. And he and I discussed what next to bring this relationship on an even keel and for peace to return to that Himalayan paradise. We get you some excerpts of that conversation on the Chakraview podcast. अपि स्वर्णमयी लंका न मे लक्ष्मण रोचते जननी जन्मभूमिश्च स्वर्गादपि गरीयसी. This is how Valmiki's Ramayana talks about Maryada Purushottam Sri Ram telling brother Lakshman after the victory over Ravan in Lanka that while Lanka is made of gold and very beautiful, it's not to my liking, because for me, Janani Janmabhumishcha, my mother and my motherland, Swargadapi Gariyasi, are greater than heaven. And this is today the national motto of the Himalayan paradise, Nepal. That shows the close civilizational bond between Bharat and Nepal. But this Himalayan paradise is in turmoil today. And to discuss more about the turmoil and the way forward, with me is someone who's very close to Nepal. Like India and Nepal are civilizationally one. Similarly, soldiers of the Indian Armed Forces and the Armed Forces of Nepal, they've shed blood together, they share the same bond. With me on this broadcast is Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, former Adjutant General of the Indian Army, a Gorkha Rifles officer, Colonel of the 11 Gorkha Rifles, and you commanded the Ladakh Corps. Sir, welcome on the Chakraview podcast.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you for inviting me.
Sir, when we look at this turmoil in Nepal today, what goes through your heart? Because it gives a lot of pain to see a brother in such deep distress.
So I agree with you. It's so painful, it is so distressing to see the kind, and it is similarly, if you recollect, 15 years ago they had that Maoist insurgency for 10 years. We were distressed at that time also to see the kind of pain and anguish that Nepalese people, which is like our own people, we never distinguish between the people of Nepal, Gurkhas, and people of India. And naturally now it is so, we feel so bad about it. I wish our goodwill is always towards Nepalese people and Nepal as a country. And having been there umpteen number of times, every time you go, you feel the warmth and the love and the affection. Since we speak the language, we feel the love and affection of people. And, of late what has happened, I wish it not happened and they would have found a better method of resolving issues.
Because, when you see the Sheetal Nivas burning, or when you see Singh Darbar, or the parliament in flames, it just hurts. I mean, it just hurts to see the turmoil.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that the students would have done this. The people are in love with their own country, and we see this here in the soldiers who have joined our armed forces. But the fact is that you see all these burnings which have been carried out it's not nice. It is national assets being lost out, and I wish it not happened this way.
Yes, and we'll talk about the crisis. We'll talk about this serious crisis when it comes to confidence in their political leadership. The manner in which homes of several leaders, the president's palace, Sheetal Niwas, set on fire, presidential house set on fire, homes of several prime ministers, not just KP Sharma Oli, but Sher Bahadur Deoba, several deputy prime ministers, finance minister, home minister, IT minister, their homes were being set on fire. Former prime ministers were being assaulted. Their families were being assaulted. The anger is palpable.
So has it started one day? Is that anger just started 48 hours ago, or is there anger which was pent up for quite some time? It has just come up to that level today. And if you start seeing, and all of us who follow what's been happening in Nepal, I think there was a pent up emotion. It just required a trigger. It just required a kind of a catalyst to take it off, and then the government provided the catalyst, and lo and behold, it was bad shape. So this was coming. Many of us who could read through. See, I give you a simple example. Look, Gaurav, in a country which is as small as Nepal is, if you have 8 to 9 lakh young boys and girls leaving their country every year for outside pastures and all largely going as blue-collar workers, I think there's a great loss to any nation.
I was speaking to somebody in Nepal who was telling me that this is the handiwork of outside forces to weaken Nepal. Blaming, they're saying, you guys in India are sleepwalking into trouble. Look at what's happening in Bangladesh, what has happened in Sri Lanka, and what is happening in Nepal. You guys are sleepwalking into trouble. I don't know. You tell me if we are. But they say that students have a very noble thought, but students are just the front. There are other forces at play. How do you see this?
Look, all this can be said, and the conspiracy theories are the first ones to be brought about. In case of Bangladesh, they had political troubles, and the agitation took place because of the problem that they had reservation. The Reservation Act. In Nepal, there was no reservation. Nepal, it came up for a different reason altogether. The students felt.
If I may, just blocking 26 websites, social media platforms will lead to a revolution.
So, unemployment is so rampant, and everybody is a YouTuber, and everybody. So, I mean, I was ashamed, but I spent so much of time on my phone, yeah. So, the fact is, the youth is only embedded to social media if they don't have better avenues to do so. And you just cannot one day morning decide. See, a Supreme Court ruling did come last year, which said that Supreme Court said that there needs to be a check on the malcontent which come across. India also have got, India also we follow this. You just can't put something there. You can call the YouTube people saying, why is this content there? So they do some checks themselves. So to ask the social media companies to make sure that no malcontent is put across there is one issue. But to ban them is another issue, because now social media was anti the current government, and they were writing so much of, people writing so much. You just cannot ban it on a decision taken in Supreme Court 1 year ago. So, it cannot be done. It is the involvement, and I think Gen Z, you must be having Gen Z kids here. Yeah. So the fact of the matter is that they are wedded to social media. It is not an additionality. It is part of life.
And in their case, it's also a way of being in touch with their family overseas.
Yeah, everything. It is, nowadays, you block a phone, you can't even use UPI. You can't get paid for a cab, yeah. So you just cannot do it. And
so was KP Sharma Oli being tone deaf, especially after his visit to China?
I don't know whether he's tone deaf or not. And I thought people should have understood the power of the student. Remember, we had Mandal in India, power of the student. We were youngsters. We saw the kind of anguish that we saw in India. The student is a strong power. They are impressionable by age. We are an aspirational country, India. Nepal is as much aspirational as people are there. You have a motorcycle, you want to buy a car. You have a car, you want to buy a better car. You have a small flat, you want to buy a bigger flat. Everybody is aspirational in nature. And it is logical. They say, yeah, look, I am entitled to same aspirations as the minister's son, who drives Range Rovers in Nepal, and flashy cars and music running around there, and I'm also entitled to. I'm also a citizen of the same country, and all this social media also puts across knowledge base which probably didn't exist there earlier. So I think the decision taken was a catalyst, but to say that is the only thing, it was pent up emotion that blew up in the face of the politicians.
You also mentioned this SUV. So there's this image that's going viral in Nepal, and somebody sent it to me. A minister's SUV going very fast. It hits a little child, and arrogantly the minister he just moves on, and the child is left on the road. That also angered the people.
So 11-year-old child, and all this, see, small thing adds up. The statement that the Prime Minister gave on this incident you're referring to was casual. Accidents happen. You can't say accident happen. Accidents happen every day. But a politician's convoy, which is going across and hits a child, and the child gets hurt badly, and the convoy doesn't stop to pick up the child and take him to hospital. Yeah, it would make a difference. So you add all these things together, it was boiling, it was there pent up. They forgot to notice that there is an issue of anguish in the nation, and also a feeling of corruption is rampant. And
it's a musical chair. Same 4-5 people just turn around and become prime ministers and ministers.
God knows how the politics works. Until yesterday, Nepali Congress was supporting Maoist Center. Prachanda was prime minister. And then one fine morning, they say, okay, Prachanda, you're no more. I will support Oli, and Oli becomes prime minister. This is not musical chair. This is, and 14 odd prime ministers in 10, 11 years, you can't even have a government to talk to. So that's why, as an institution, the political hierarchy was under stress. They should have been under stress to say one day people will get annoyed. If you add all these people going out, migrating, no educational institutions, etc., then there is a large amount of grievance that existed in Nepal.
So what, according to you, should be the path that Nepal adopts, these youngsters, the army, because apparently the anger with the existing leadership is tremendous. They don't want any of this old leadership back in power.
So some good names have been thrown up. See, we went to Nepal recently, 6 months, 8 months ago, and even then people said, yeah, look at the work done by Balen Shah. Now, Balen is a politician. He just became a mayor in 22. He's just 3 years old. But he turned the city. He's turned this Kathmandu city. He has been so harsh. The kiosks been removed, clean. We have been to Kathmandu so many times that we saw a substantive change in Kathmandu this time we went. And Balen Shah brought it. And he was strong, ham-handed. And he brought a change. And the change was, and he's young. He's 90 born, okay, 90. So he's young, and he has a future. So Balen Shah, Mrs. Karki is from Purba. She's in Purba, she's from East. She's from Dharan, Viratnagar.
Isn't that where your regiment,
my regiment is
had more of its soldiers?
Yeah, our soldiers come from that area, Rai Limbus. So, Mrs. Karki is from East, and she has been strong against corruption, very strong against corruption. So, people remember her, that she came up
and she took some very strong decisions also.
Very strong decisions. And, she was, so maybe Mrs. Karki is the interim government, because Balen Shah now has said that he is not keen on forming the government, and he is saying, I support Mrs. Sushila Karki. So if Sushila Karki becomes, she was Chief Justice of and Supreme Court, and she is well aware. See, To agitate is one part. To govern is another part altogether. To govern is not easy, You have to run so many institutions from economics to foreign policy, etc.
And rebuild, even courts, district courts burnt, high courts, Supreme Court burnt, whether those documents remain.
First bring peace into the country. First bring an assurance that आगे ठीक होगा. Things will be better in future. That assurance to the people of Nepal that we will bring about a change.
Shock and bloodshed on yet another American campus. Charlie Kirk, one of US President Donald Trump's closest allies, gunned down in front of a live audience on television. The assassination was caught on camera, and it's reignited that very urgent question about rise of political violence in the United States of America. President Trump condoled the death, called it a dark day for the United States. We get you more in this report.
Not counting gang violence. Great.
Charlie Kirk, a key ally of President Donald Trump, is shot dead. The 31-year-old founder of Turning Point USA was on the stage addressing students at the Utah Valley University when he was fired at. The shooter is believed to have been on the roof of a building across the road, more than 100 yards from the stage, where the right-wing activist was speaking. The event was part of Kirk's American comeback tour.
This morning I can tell you that we have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. It is a high-powered bolt-action rifle. That rifle was recovered in a wooded area where the shooter had fled. The FBI laboratory will be analyzing this weapon. Investigators have also collected footwear impression, a palm print, and forearm imprints for analysis.
The police arrested 2 people but released them later. Multiple agencies, including the FBI, are involved in a manhunt.
The only information we have on the suspect, the possible shooter, is taken from closed-circuit TV here on campus. We do have that. We're analyzing it, but it is security camera footage, so you can kind of guess what the quality of that is. But we do know dressed in all dark clothing, but we don't have much better description other than that.
Join me in welcoming the next.
Kirk was a rising star in the conservative network. President Trump called him a true patriot and vowed to hunt down everyone responsible for the killing described by Republican leaders as political assassination. US flags across the country have been lowered to half-mast.
Grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now.
Former presidents Barack Obama and Joe Biden posted messages on social media condemning the murder.
Counting gang violence. Great.
Kirk's assassination marks the latest in a dangerous surge of political violence in the US. Last year, Trump himself was shot at during a rally in Pennsylvania, narrowly surviving with a ear wound. Governors' homes have been torched. Judges have faced threats. And in December, United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was killed in a brazen Manhattan hit. Today, American people fear political violence is becoming the norm. Bureau Report, India Today.
Well, that is all we have time for on India First this evening. Many thanks for watching.